Good evening. Welcome to All the Things. I am Monique Dusan.
I'm Krista Bontrager, also known as Theology Mom, and this is a show where we discuss all the things
related to God, life, and the Bible.
Righty-o.
Yes.
And helping us on the show tonight and just basically every day is Bob Bontrager.
I was like, did you forget his name?
No,
he stuttered.
I was waiting for the dissolve.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I was like, no, he's still the same person.
Oh, no.
Man, we've had a crazy day.
This you know what this day reminds me of? This day we spoke all day at the Mama Bear Apologetics Conference, and then we did the show in the evening, and we were like, we're never doing that again.
Yeah, except for today.
Except for today.
Here we had today.
Yeah, so we spoke today pretty much all day. Sound check started at, I think, 7 o'clock this morning.
Yes, it did.
For our friend Joe Miller's conference in his new launch of his new ministry,
Cultural Apologetics.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a whole day on critical race theory and Christianity. And we should probably say that there was a very unfortunate situation that we discovered yesterday.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Which was that somebody had spoofed Joe's Facebook event.
Yes.
And they had completely duplicated it and propagated it to all of our pages as sponsors.
Yes, and then mirrored it.
Yeah, unfortunately, they were taking people's money.
No, I didn't know they were taking money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like somebody told me they had to cancel like a bunch of credit cards.
No.
Yeah. So we're sorry. We put a note on our Facebook this morning about, don't fall for this scam. But
we just found out
about it. And Joe had notified Facebook yesterday and they didn't do anything.
Oh.
So,
yeah.
But we have a cool gift.
Yes.
So
we do.
Tell them about the gift.
So we have received access to the recordings from today's conference, and we can give those away specifically to our CFBU family.
Yeah.
So if you are not on our mailing list, sign up for our mailing list. But before 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, Pacific Standard Time, and we will send you the link to the recordings from today's conference.
That's right. So you can go there. You're going to get the whole conference for free.
Yes.
Joe Miller is gifting us with this for the CFB family. So all you have to go is centerforbiblicalunity.com.
Wait like 2 to 3 seconds.
And then fill out the form. And then you're going to be on our email list. And you'll receive our digital newsletter tomorrow morning. And it's going to have the link on there so you can go access all the talks. The talks were just amazing today.
They were. Now, when you're on our website, you're going to wait 2 to 3 seconds because it's going to auto-populate with a pop-up that says sign up for our mailing list, and you'll just put your email address in there.
Now, Edwin Ramirez says free.
Free, yes. Right? Free is one of my favorite things.
Is that your love language?
Yes, it is. So we did that, and then we had to run an errand after the conference because Bath & Body Works had a sale, y'all. I'm not even going to lie. I needed some lotion.
People, the lotion.
Yes, it is real. And then we had to run back here, and now we are here.
We're here.
Yes.
So we want to invite everyone to join us on the chat over on YouTube. You can check in with us. Let us know you're watching. And be sure to share this on your social media. It's a great way to introduce people to the ministry. It's a different kind of a topic tonight, a little less controversial. So we really hope you'll share the show on your social media. That helps us a lot with analytics and helping to overcome the shadow banning.
Yes, please do. Now, I see that Allison Wardrip is in the chat box on YouTube.
She's our guest moderator.
She's our guest moderator. Thank you so much. She also does all of our show notes.
She is our official production assistant.
Yes.
I would be lost without her.
I would call her our production angel. Yes. We are very thankful.
Yes.
Yes. And then I'm on the CFBU Facebook page, and I believe you might be on Theology Mom Facebook.
Yep.
So yes, type your questions and comments in there. And also, while we're talking about moderators, our show is brought to you by Family 210 Clothing, which,
yes,
maybe not.
We have the design of the night.
There it is.
the Nazarene.
Yes.
So if any fans of The Mandalorian are out there, this is sort of Bob's riff on that.
Yes. And it is also brought to you by the Center for Biblical Unity,
Theology Mom Podcast.
and Theology Mom Podcast.
And one more sponsor coming in later in the show.
Yes.
So stay tuned. So when you go to that link, you can go find our family shop at Family 210 on Teespring, or you can go to the bit.ly link and go to /the Nazarene. But $5 of every purchase there goes directly to help our family, literally putting food on our table. And we are so grateful. This is a very practical way that you can help sow into our family. If you have to give any gifts, go do that.
Yes, yes.
So, all right. So tell us about our family member that we're going to talk to tonight.
Okay, I'm really excited about our conversation tonight because we're going to talk with Rhianna Sanford. Now, way back, I don't even know how way back it was, but Rhianna would come on in the chat and she would just be putting all kind of stuff. And I'm like, I wonder who this is. And then one day we were talking about identity and she was like, we can have a conversation about identity. I wrote a book about identity. I was like, you wrote a book about identity? And this is when I was still coming out of like progressivism and and not CFB, but CRT. And I didn't really know why you would write a book on identity. I was just like so intrigued. And then eventually we ended up having like a phone call. And, oh, you know what? I think it may have been around, I don't know, like I put something on Twitter and then she responded. But all of this to say, she's been a part of the CFBU family for a while. And
almost from the beginning, really.
Almost from the beginning, yeah. And we've been texting back and forth and just getting to know each other. She actually has a special needs daughter.
Yeah.
And when we were talking about this and the journey and the road, it was just awesome. Like, it was awesome to see what the Lord did with her and her husband and how he's I think really shifted mindset and narrative of even, and I mean, we can ask her, but like the relationship all the way around regarding dignity. And so.
And this kind of ties into the live stream that I did.
That's what I was going to say.
Just this past Tuesday.
Yes.
Is I kind of did kind of a theological overview of the issue of dignity for all humans, and in particular, people in the special needs population, and kind of how to think about that from a distinctly Christian point of view. So we're going to be talking to Rhianna, which is a great, like, practical kind of case study.
Yes.
Of, how do you live this out?
Yes.
What kind of mindset do you have to have if you're going to think about living this out in your home? We always have a saying at CFBU that justice begins at home.
Yes.
Before we're going to have a big conversation about everything out there, let's first take inventory of what's happening in our home. How are we treating each other in the home?
Yes. And so I honestly just, I think that it's a good middle ground, like you said, because you did a teaching last Tuesday on, the disabled.
Yeah.
And now being able to have a conversation with Rhianna about Kaya and looking at, like you said, a case study, but then also I think the prep for next week's show that's coming, or your live stream.
On Tuesday, I'm doing another live stream, which will be another case study from someone in my family, my aunt and uncle, who have my cousin. Their daughter is also a special needs child with different issues, but, finding out about their journey, and they're a little older, and, they're in their 70s. And so they can give kind of an interesting perspective of, now that their daughter is 37, they've been on that journey for quite a while.
Yeah.
So
it'll be cool to talk about too, like, how can the church unite with families who may have children with special needs?
So it's definitely tying into conversation about unity.
Yeah. Unity is deeper than, just racial unity. We need to have a thought about unity that's extremely holistic.
Definitely.
So, all right. I say, let's bring her on.
Let's get her on. Rhianna.
Hey.
Glad to see you. Thanks so much for doing this and talking to us.
Oh my gosh, you guys don't have any idea how excited and honored I am to be on the show with you guys. You're some of my favorite people. to be online with. So.
We are so glad you are here. Please tell us about yourself. Tell us about Kaya and all the things.
All the things, right? So, yeah, I'm a mama of a special needs child who is 17. So we have been at this for a long time. Kaya has been, in many ways, not just our child. She's been the mechanism to which how God has shown us Himself, has been able to really help us understand what love is, unconditional love. And, it started out as just, she was born and we thought we had just a neurotypical child on our hands, baby girl, and everything seemed quite normal. And when she was about 9 to 10 months old, we noticed that she was starting to go backwards in her speech. She was going backwards in a lot of her fine motor skills, starting to drop things like sippy cups and toys. And we kind of started scratching our heads a little bit and trying to figure out what's going on. Now, she's our first child, so, we didn't know what's normal and what's not normal, but we were just kind of curious about why it seemed like she was going backwards in skills. And by the time she was a year old, we decided to start seeing a specialist. And because she wasn't talking anymore and she wasn't crawling and she wasn't trying to walk or anything. And so started seeing a specialist. And for the next 2.5 years, we just didn't know. We just didn't know no one had any answers for us other than that she was developmentally delayed. And so by the time she was about 3.5 years old, we were able to get a diagnosis for a neurological disorder called Rett syndrome, RETT. And it is a fairly rare disorder, and it is actually known as the most debilitating of autistic disorders seen on the autistic spectrum in girls. Mostly in girls. There are very, very few boys born with this condition. But at that point, I know I can speak for myself. Lots of questions, the why and the, did I do something wrong? And while she was, in my belly, and just, as a mama, you start to kind of take on blame a lot when something goes, awry with your child. And so I found myself really having to dig deep as to what I believed, as to what I believed about who I am, about who she is, about who God is. And that kind of started our journey, about the age of, I don't know, I guess it started at 9 months old when she started going backwards. But when we finally got the diagnosis at about 3.5, almost 4, and learning that's an incurable disorder, that's an incurable disease, we were like, okay, well, life is going to look way different than what we ever expected. And
so I'm imagining there, like, kind of two things it sounds like were happening for you at the same time. Like, there was the whole journey of the medical diagnosis and trying to sort that out and where are we going. But then there was also the journey, it sounds like, of the emotional part of it, of trying to figure out, well, what does this mean? I'm imagining that there was kind of some grieving that you had to do about not maybe dreams unfulfilled or getting different dreams, or that life would look different. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, and I wrote this in the book that I wrote called This Special Life. There were things that I had in my mind, as a mama, that I would enjoy with my daughter. So some of those things were some of the same things that I enjoyed doing with my mama, like singing in the car, she would always take the alto part and I would always take the soprano part, little things like that. Watching her maybe in a dance class in a little pink tutu, walking her into her first day of kindergarten. And so there are these ideas and these expectations that I did have as a mama, and I think fairly, very normal types of things But those are the things that you tend to grieve. And I will say there was a kind of an intense grieving process within the first few years of getting the diagnosis. And, you ask the questions, is this happening to me? Like, why is this happening to me type of deal? And you kind of struggle with the idea of a little bit of victimhood. And like I said, you really just kind of have to come to grips of going back to what, as a believer, what does God's word say in regards to our life, in regards to, even though we have this situation and this circumstance, what does God say? And there was some growing seasons in there in the early parts for sure. But you're right, there's definitely this grieving process that kind of happened, and especially earlier on in our journey.
So I understand like the grieving process and like different, grand either expectations or hopes that parents face that may shift and needing to, kind of regroup with some of those things. But what are other issues or like struggles that you think parents of special needs children really face that we may not be aware
of? Feeling secluded, feeling alone in the world, and yes, sometimes even within the church. Just, people, you are kind of just like sideswiped, like with this whole thing that's going on, and it's just like, again, like not expected. And so people don't, it's kind of like when someone dies, people don't necessarily know what's the best thing to say. And they don't really know how to respond sometimes. And so sometimes people, just because they don't know how to respond, they don't reach out, they don't reach out to help. And they don't, sometimes I just would have random checks show up in the mail, which was nice. And God, definitely kind of helped us in that way, but I think that was an act of like, people didn't know what else to do or how else to help, type of thing. Sometimes support, when it comes to just, for example, like in church, if we're going to church or whatever, some churches are really very well set up, for, to care for special needs children. And then other churches, we walk in and they're looking at you like, oh gosh, please don't leave her. Like, you can tell, like, you can read it on her face, like, cause we're rolling her in, in this like big stroller for a 6 or 7 year old type of, and they're like, because we have 2 other boys that are not far from her age. And so we'd be, dropping them off. And you could tell there's the question, are you going to leave her here too? Like, we don't know what to do, with that. And so you kind of feel burdened. You don't want to feel a burden. You don't want anybody else to feel burdened. So you just, take on some of those things where you're like, oh, I'll just keep her, we'll just keep her in the service, or we just won't go, we just won't go to church because we don't know that there's a church that we can go to that we feel comfortable, that our whole family will be served type of deal. So those are some of the things that we've kind of have faced.
Yeah. I don't think, I think people completely unintentionally, but we just become absorbed in our own world. And when we are like looking just at like, well, this is what I have to do on my day to day, we can definitely miss, people who are struggling in other ways. And right. I think this is, as a, a former children's minister and director, like when parents would come, I could also see the fear in their eyes of, wait, should I leave my kid? Because I don't know that you're really going to be able to handle it, or like, not handle it, the child handle the situation. What if there's a situation that arises? And man, one of the things that I always wanted to encourage parents in our children's ministry was to go and, worship and take that time and I would hope that more children's ministries would adopt that way of thinking, so that children can have the interaction that they want to have too, and that parents can not get the separation that they need, but have the freedom to be able to worship and maybe consider it a family issue. Like, we're family. You're not just dropping a kid off in children's ministry and I'm some stranger. No, we need to be able to adopt a family model that, hey, Auntie Mo is going to come here and she's going to be with you, and not just, some service.
Right.
But
I think
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the other thing, not just so that maybe mom and dad can go and worship, but so that mom and dad can also be in service.
Yeah.
Like be doing some of the serving, within that local community. Because I know for me, like, there was a church in Kansas City that we just moved out. Shout out to everybody at City Center Church in Kansas City. But I remember when we first started bringing our daughter there, and they literally were taking her from us, like, go do what you do. Because I was a music minister, like I would sing in the choir and on the praise team. And it's like, there's no way I could have done that if no one was willing to kind of help with Kaya. And so that's a huge part of it too. And I think if we're thinking about being a living and breathing community, church, then we have to be willing to kind of have those supports, so that people can be serving and be able to actually, worship together. So
what level of service, like, can you explain like the level of service that Kaya needs with Rett syndrome?
Yeah. She needs 24-hour care. She is not able to do anything on her own. Rett syndrome has different girls have different abilities and challenges, but for Kaya, she is not able to walk. She's not able to talk. She literally needs 100% assistance with all daily, needs, activities, and everything. And so she's someone who will never be able to live on her own. She will be with her dad and I, or, God forbid, if something happens to us, then that goes down to the, responsibility of her brothers. My teenager is looking over there at me, shaking his head like, yep. Mm-hmm. And we've had to have that conversation. They know that is expected of them. And, it's a hard conversation, to have with the siblings. But when our situation, Kaya was the first child, so her brothers don't remember her any other kind of way. They've always known her as someone just as she is. Maybe with some challenges, but have loved her just the way that she is, just because the way that she is. And so I know that they are going to be some fantastic husbands and daddies and maybe caregivers, someday themselves. So
I'm wondering, as you've been on this journey, how your faith has informed, and the situation, how your faith has grown and been stretched. Kind of, maybe you could give us a little snapshot of that journey, or maybe where you were and where having Kaya in your life has brought you to, and how the Lord's used that.
It's the epitome of the word faith. Everything about our journey points to the epitome of the word faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things yet, not seen yet. And we believe, if we have this Christian worldview, this biblical worldview, what are the things that we know, right? That this life is not it, right? That there is an eternal perspective, that this is not her forever body. And so once I kind of remembered, like, what is it that I believe? Like, I had to kind of sometimes shake myself when I would, the mama heart, the fleshly part of me would kind of sometimes want to take over, and I would find myself sad or angry or bitter or just depressed or something like that. I kind of have to shake myself and go back to the word and be like, what is it that I believe all these years? You know, I grew up a Christian, right? I don't know anything else but Christianity. That's the way I was raised in my house. So it was like, I had to just apply. I had to really, it's like when the rubber hits the road, and should be the thing that all of us as Christians, if we're going to call ourselves Christians, is there application to what the word says to your life? And I had every opportunity with this journey. And I think we all do. We all have different situations. I just feel like ours was like intense, you know, like just throwing us in there, like, all right, here you go. It's time to really apply the word. So when we read, you know, that these are momentary troubles, you know, that we know that we can expect just like an eternal glory. And, you know, Paul talks about the thorn in his side and how even in his weakness, you know, God is made strong. He is made strong even in his weakness. And it's like he can boast about his weaknesses because of the Lord, because of just leaning on him for everything, you know, every possible thing. And it's like, that's what it became to me. I had to literally eat, breathe, drink, like everything within me had to be in regards to how he sees me. All right. What his word says about me. And I had to see everything through those eyes, because if I didn't, depression, limiting beliefs, you know, like I would limit myself on what I could or could not do in the world, because I'm just so like bound by limitations, limiting what she can do in the world, you know, not really seeing her for who God sees her as, and realizing like, okay, right, if this word gives me value, if I have an identity in Christ, and so does she. Mm-hmm. So I can't look at her as broken or as less than, because then that's not fair to her. That's devaluing her. So then it was just like the way that we treated her, and the way that, you know, we expect that no matter what, she is going to live out her God-given value in this world, no matter what.
That's powerful.
And that's freeing. You know, that's freeing when you don't have the burden of just, you know, this woe is me, or she's not going to be able to walk, or she's not going to be able to talk. Like, you know, like you really just have to change your focus, you know, on the things that you know, onto the things that God says about us, instead of just looking at the earthly, you know, type of mentality. And there's so many expectations, I think, in the world, you know, my own expectations, putting that on her wasn't fair for her, because she has her own value. She has her own purpose in this world. And so, you know, I had to kind of just get rid of the stuff that I was trying to make happen, you know, for the sake of just my own expectations, and really get back to focusing on just God, you know her, you know her value, you know her purpose. And we just glorify you for all the things that she's supposed to do in the world.
I think that's such a good point. And it really just dovetails nicely with the live stream that I did this last week about one of the distinctly Christian aspects of our faith when it comes to dealing with people with disabilities is that they don't get their value and their worth and their dignity functionally, you know, from what they do. The Christian worldview is that people have intrinsic value simply because they are human, and humans are created in the image of God. And so if we're going to think Christianly about these matters, we cannot think functionally. We have to think in terms of intrinsic dignity, which is exactly what Rhianna is describing here. A worldly way of thinking says, I'm going to think about a person's value based on their function. And sometimes we have a euphemism of their quality of life. That is a distinctly worldly way of thinking. So we have to think, this begins in the mind. We have to have a Christian worldview, and then we live that out. I want to give a shout out to your book, Rhianna. Bob's got it here. This Special Life, Living Life with Special Needs and Loving It. People can get that up on Amazon. Did you want to respond to anything I said there, Rhianna?
Something came to mind when you were saying that about this Christian worldview, but I also think within the Christian community, there are some misconceptions in regards to when children are born with special needs or with challenges. I think I mentioned this to Monique one day, or maybe in the chat or something from a different, something I was watching you guys do, but there was a lady one day that decided that in our prayer circle, and we had asked her prayer for some health issues that our daughter had, she proceeded to go on and pray for forgiveness of the sins of her mom and her dad that made her this way. And so even within the Christian faith, there's some misconceived, perceptions maybe in regards to when children are born with special needs. And I think it comes from, a part of scripture or whatever about, and I think you mentioned this in part one, Krista, of your stream, but about what are the sins of the parents that made the child this way.
Yeah, the disciples actually asked that very question to Jesus, and he says, no, that's not the right question. That is not the right. It's like someone stopped. It's like a lot of people just stopped there at that question and didn't read on to the rest of the context about the glory, that God can get, or that Jesus can get. So even within the body of believers, there are some misconceived, some just bad, twisted ideas in regard. And so some of that value that's misplaced within children that are like my daughter is because of things like that. That's good. Well. We're going to go out to some comments. Let's go to Facebook. Monique says that there's some good comments there.
Comments. I think one of the things that I learned on your Tuesday live stream was how many families within the CFBU family or within the Theology Mom family have children that are on the spectrum or have some form of special need. Can you scroll up, Bob? And I was like, wow, I never knew that, there were so many. People were just in there, like, saying, hey, this is me. Like, this is applicable to me. Yeah. And I really appreciated it and wanted to figure out a way that we can unite all of the parents. But just going quickly through Facebook, I see a comment from Sharon. She says, hi, mom of awesome son with DS here. Appreciate your developmental disability biblical talk. I'm not sure what DS is. Sharon, would you mind putting that in so I can know? And then
Babe, did she miss the A? I wonder, or she maybe ASD. I don't know if she maybe missed the D, typo or something.
Yeah, maybe not. Are you on CFBU Facebook?
I'm on CFBU's Facebook. And then Jane says, I have 2 boys with autism and ADHD. Church can be difficult. People at church are nice. I'm sorry, people are nice at church, but we never feel like we really belong.
Yeah, we never really belong. Oh, that's
Best advice I got when the boys were diagnosed was seek therapy myself. It was great advice. Let's see. Kathy Lou. She says, I just wrote about this yesterday and this morning on my page. Now I know Kathy, and she also volunteers with CFBU, and she has children who are deaf.
And she hard of hearing?
She is, yes, herself.
Yeah.
We
love Kathy Lou.
We do. I really see the special needs community is a ripe harvest, but they don't know how to get involved into a church. My goodness.
Well, I'm kind of sensing that there's a lot of needs here. I'm wondering, because there was a comment earlier that Bob flashed on the screen about, what churches can do. And if you have a smaller church versus a larger church, I'm feeling like that needs to be maybe more of a conversation. I don't know.
DS stands for Down syndrome. I don't know why I didn't put that together.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, I don't know.
That makes sense.
But that makes sense. Now, you were saying like a smaller church versus a larger church.
Yeah.
I wonder how churches could pull resources and participate together. You know, like Kathy's, I think 3 of her children are hard of hearing, and she's a transracial adoptive parent or interracial adoptive parent.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like if the church here in Upland, like, and there's a lot of churches in Upland. So let's say there's 10 churches in Upland.
At least.
Okay, at least. Could 3, like, and make sure y'all Bible believing, y'all got to believe in all the things, but could they get together and be like, hey, we are going to be the ones to sow into an interpreter, sow into, childcare, sow into some of these things so that people aren't left on the wayside.
Yeah.
Or, feeling like they don't have a place to belong.
I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about what local churches could do better, Rhianna?
And I know everything is always easier said than done.
Of course.
But one of the things, I know that there are people in the world that have giftings and talents and desires, to work with children with special needs. That's why we have schools full of them, right? I don't believe that there is a lack of people in the world that can work and kind of help serve these children in churches. The question is, are enough of them going to church themselves to be able to, kind of say, hey, yeah, I'd love to be able to be a part of the special needs ministry and help support families that are living, with special needs. And
so if there's somebody in the church that maybe is working in the special needs area in their Monday through Friday job, being intentional about hopefully those people are putting some time into their local church to utilize those skills for that local congregation.
Right. And I realize that that's a lot, if they're working Monday through Friday, they're like, the weekend is my time off type of deal. But that's kind of going back to what the church is supposed to be. Like, if we're family, then you're not thinking about, you're thinking about how can I serve my family?
Yes.
Even Monday through Sunday, how can I serve my family?
And, how can a church hold a training for children's ministry workers who will specialize in special needs children? Like that, it's not that, to me, it's not that, complicated. Like, you don't have to have a full-time job as a special needs assistant in a school or things like that. You could be a lawyer. You can be a candlestick maker. It doesn't matter. We can train you on what to do.
And that's teenagers too. Yeah. Teenagers are awesome with kids with special needs. I mean, I've seen them in camps and things like that, and they, don't leave them out. Let them, if they feel the tugging on their hearts to work with kids like that, then, make sure that they know that they can help and serve in that way too.
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting because it would really kind of require almost a little bit of a remessaging or flipping the script a little bit with teenagers and young adults, instead of just coming and having all the programming be for them. Was like, well, how could you serve? And, that's an interesting situation, but having a training is also an interesting idea. I'm wondering, now I'm having all kind of ideas. This is sort of reminding me of when we had Latasha Fields on, because this is like, all right, how do we help our local churches? Like, I'm always in favor of solutions. Like, okay, we can come on here and identify a problem, but now let's start thinking creatively with some ideas of how can we empower things to be different and inspiring people to get a different vision. So that's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So
I love a kid who serves. Don't play no games.
So what do you think about, we have a great question on YouTube from Allison. She says, how should we in the general population, just I think when we're out and about in our lives, we see parents out in the park or at the mall or wherever with a child with a disability. Is it appropriate to ask questions, or is that kind of considered rude and insensitive? Like, what could we do in a real world situation to show kindness? Like what, or is that just super intrusive and weird and awkward?
I will tell you that, and again, I'm speaking from my perspective, but I really do think this is true within the majority of the special needs community. We would rather you be curious and ask questions, because then that shows that you care. When people don't ask questions, it's almost as if they don't care. They just, that's their problem, type of deal. And it's not really, we don't see it as a problem. We see it as a blessing, and an honor to get to have this journey. But definitely don't say, I'm sorry. And people do that all the time because of their own expectations, because of what they believe is quote unquote normal. And so when I tell someone, our daughter, she's in a wheelchair, she's not able to walk or talk. And then the normal response a lot of the time is, oh, I'm sorry, and it's almost as if, like I said, like if someone passed away or someone died or something, because in their minds, they're seeing her as someone who is not as valuable, as someone who cannot do because of this the difference of what she can or cannot do. So I'm sorry immediately devalues her as a human being and as a child of God. So I always just try to say to people very nicely, oh, don't be, we're not, we absolutely love that she's our daughter. We love being her parents, she's been like the light of our lives. And so we respond a lot better than I think a lot of people might do, because it kind of can be very hard to hear things like that. But so that's one thing. The other thing is just to, I know when I have felt very valued, when people have gone out of the way to invite us over to their home, even for dinner, and they'll ask, okay, what do we need to do to make sure we have everything, set there so Kaya, is comfortable or whatever. I'm telling you, that just fills my heart with so much love and appreciation, because they're going through maybe out of their comfort zone a little bit to invite our family over. It's a big deal to go to someone else's house when you're a special needs family, because that they're opening their home to all of you, all of the stuff that is not quite, what they're used to and all of that. And people like to ask questions and be curious. And that's a really, really great way to show love to families like mine. And so those are the things that kind of come to my mind. Be curious, definitely ask the questions, teach your children to, if they're curious, to allow them to ask questions, because a lot of times some kids will just stare. And I know that kind of gets to the siblings a little bit. When Kaya doesn't care, Kaya's just like, look, I'm living my life. I don't know what y'all doing. I'm living my life. But the siblings feel a little bit awkward when they just stare. So sometimes when the little, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds are looking at Kaya because it looks like she's a big baby in a big stroller, and I'll say, you can say hi, you can say hi. And sometimes when I start that and I'll say, you can say hi, she can hear you. Then they kind of start to ask questions. Well, why is she in this big, stroller? And I said, well, she's not able to walk. And well, why is she not able to walk? Well, because she was born not able to walk. And so then we're just able to kind of get into a dialogue, and that really helps kids to understand, and then, but look at her in her eyes and smile at her, and you can, put your hand on her hand, and she will really connect with you. And so I just like to make sure that I tell, make a comfortable setting for people to know that it's okay if you ask questions, but definitely teach your children that they're just as valuable as you are. They're just as valuable as you are. They just were born a little bit differently, but that doesn't mean different doesn't mean bad. Different doesn't mean less. That just means that they're different. So those are some things that have come to mind.
I love how practical that is. It gives me like a picture of, some things to say, some things to do.
when you talk about connect, don't think I'm a stalker, but yeah, I was on your Facebook page, and you have some videos of your husband and Kaya and how they connect. And when you say like she can hear you and she, look her in her eyes, she can connect their interaction is so sweet. And yeah, girl, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit
she's a daddy's girl. I would tell you that her father is her favorite human in the whole wide world. And Kaya is a flirt. Like, Kaya will bat her eyes and make you melt like in 2 seconds, because she just has a way of communicating like through giggles and laughs and eye contact. And she will, reach out and grab you and everything. You will be her best friend in 2 minutes if you just get on her level, look her in the eyeballs, speak to her like she's a human being, because just because she can't verbalize back to you doesn't mean that she's not communicating. Mm-hmm. Nonverbal does not mean non-ability to communicate. She absolutely can communicate. And she's 17, so she can get really sassy with her communication, even with me nowadays. I would tell you that she's rolled her eyes at me a time or two, and I'm like, oh, no, you didn't.
I think that's so important to remember too, when we talk about dignity, these are all things that go along with dignity. Look someone in their eyes, talk to them directly. Don't talk about them, talk to them, ask questions. These are all the ways that we participate with another person's dignity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's really, it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine that so many Christians are right. You see them on social media and they all want to talk about justice, or just tell me the thing I need to do for justice so I can kind of cleanse myself of my whiteness and the sins of being white, and I'll do the justice things and then I'll be okay. And I'm like, okay, we just need to slow down here a minute. Like, there's the little things in our community, in our local church, in our families that we need to do in treating each other with dignity. That's where justice begins. We can't fix all of these things with the external systems, because we could be selfish in our hearts. And if we aren't engaging with each other according to God's pattern of love and justice, it's almost hypocritical to just focus on the exterior things. It drives me crazy. But I think that, what we're talking about here is the little things, which actually mean a lot to a family like the Sanfords and like Kaya as an individual, to honor her dignity. That is not a small thing for them.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, going back to the question about my faith.
Yeah.
When the times kind of got really rough, like for example, health issues and things like that, I could remember myself really just kind of almost outside of myself, like just kind of stepping outside of mom and really making sure that I kept at the forefront of who I am as the believer in Jesus Christ, that Romans 8:28, applies for these situations, for these circumstances, for these, like, no matter what, he's going to work all things out for our good because we love him and we are called according to his word. It really did help me to really kind of walk the walk as a Christian, walk the walk, talk the talk. And I can't, like, all if she was not born the way that she was born, I honestly don't know if I would have this faith that I have. So when all the other things kind of start to happen, when there's the question of, if, as a Black person, right? When there's all these questions of, do you feel like, Black people are treated equally or whatever? In my mind, I already think of things differently because of my daughter, because I have already decided that I don't identify as an African-American first. I identify as a child of God first. And what does that mean for me? I learned that. I learned how to do that and how important it was to who I am in the eyes of Christ because of my daughter. Because I had to learn how to do that with her. I had to learn how to make sure I identified her as a child of God and someone made in the image of God. And so many of the things that are going on in the world now, I just feel like, not to say that my heart breaks over injustice, obviously, and everybody's heart should break over injustice, but I see injustice as just like a way, and I don't know, just a different way than maybe the average, person might, because of the fact that there are a lot of things that happen in the world that are not in your control. But what you have to know is you have to know who you are in Christ. You have to know your purpose. You have to know your value no matter what, because that's stuff that is divine. Nobody can take that from you.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of a perspective, you look at the world in a different way. People, it's really hard to be offended. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's really hard to be offended when you have that perspective.
When you know who you are and you know whose you are, then it's very freeing, because then you're truly free to love, like in the realest sense of, Monique and I have had these conversations. She's like, in talking to a lot of our supporters, she's like, really, people just want to be loved.
Yeah.
They just really want to be honored. And she's like, this makes so much more sense to me now, because I know who I am and I know who they are. And that's my brother and sister in Christ. So I can talk to them, honor them, smile with them, make them laugh, all of these things. We can just be family together. So
I want to go to
so many good comments.
The comments on Facebook, on the CFBU Facebook page. Ben says, we had pews and there were only places for wheelchairs in the back. So we completely took up the pews, shortened some sections, and made multiple places at different distances from the front so they could be in or with the rest of the congregation wherever they wanted. I love that. We also installed a multi-floor lift in our foyer because people had to go outside to go downstairs if they couldn't actually take the stairs. Those old buildings are not ADA compliant. I do agree with that. Let's see.
But I loved it how they thought creatively of, here's a need. Like, is that a need, Rhianna, that you've seen as well?
Yeah, and then also just not having a facility to do things like change children. Like, I don't know where I would change my daughter if I needed to change her at church. Like, I do, like, those situations like that, like, we can't even find a place like that on the road. Like, if we're traveling cross country or something like that, poor girl just has to sit in her chair in whatever mess she's made, because there's not a place to change someone like that, in that size. She's like 3 times the size of the baby changing station in the gas station. You know what I mean? So even just stuff like that a lot of times churches aren't thinking about. So a facility to kind of make sure that you have, that there can be the care, that needs to be given to someone like our daughter would be something that I think a lot of people just don't think about,
Jane has a comment on CFBU Facebook. She says, I have run into churches asking me to serve in the children's ministry because my kids have special needs. I have the knowledge how to deal with special needs. The problem is I'm tired. I want to worship. I want the worship time to rest in Jesus. Please give me an hour to rest. It's not so bad as they get older, but when they were young, I would carry guilt about not wanting to serve in children's ministry. And I will personally say that I know parents who don't go to church for that reason, because if they take their kid to children's ministry, then they, have to stay in children's ministry. And it's like, well, I only got 2 kids. So why am I now going to take my 2 kids to church so that I can go ahead and take care of 50 more in addition to those 2? It's like, I'm just going to stay home. Is that like something that you've seen or experienced?
I haven't really experienced it. I will say that the churches that, So the churches that we spent the most time in have been very well serving to our family. The one in Kansas City, like I said, the first church that my daughter was ever in was actually the church that we planted and pastored at for 7.5 years. So of course she was well served there, because she's the pastor's kid. Y'all have to take care of this kid so I can get on the keyboard and my husband can, be preaching. But when we moved to Kansas City, we started going, there were several churches that we tried, several churches that weren't, definitely not ready to take on that challenge. And just said, it's probably better if they actually told us it'd probably be better if she stayed with you in service, and then we found City Center Church, where they were basically like taking her from us. Like, don't worry about it. We got it, and that's the place we stayed for, I don't know, the next 6 or 7 years until we moved here to Florida. And the place that we are right now, they don't have the special needs. They do have a special needs ministry, but they don't have it going on right now because of the whole COVID thing. But they do have a special needs ministry. And so for the most part, where we have found ourselves are places that we felt like they could serve. As now our daughter is 17 and she's really kind of aged out of the children's ministry period. But I do know, like, I would be that way. Like, if it was me, like, I don't necessarily want to work in the ministry because of the fact that this is my life, every day of the week. And so I can understand someone having that same feeling.
Sharon says, a lot of us are single moms. Stopped doing fellowship because I had to spend, the whole time making sure he was observing everyone's personal space. He is 25, so that can get really awkward, having an adult male I trust if he needs to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Again, it's, I can see how when there aren't, people that you trust or specific services in place where people would step back. I think the church has a real opportunity to be able to speak into the lives of families with, special needs individuals.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there anything else on? Trying to see.
So there's a great comment on here. Vera is on CFBU Facebook. Vera says, when one of our weeknight community groups added a small portable ramp at one of the doors in their home with no prompting by us, it was such a beautiful gesture of love. Kylie could attend study of scripture in her power chair and not have to be in her manual chair pushed by us.
Wow.
What a great proactive step in seeing a need.
Yeah. And my love language is acts of service. And so I know when, like, for example, when we moved to where we are right now, there were no ramps. And the landlord here, decided to put in a ramp for us. He's like, you all need to be able to get up. Child is being valued. And I think, these things of what can we be doing at church and things of that nature. I think the best thing for people to do is just kind of start having conversations about it. That's probably the first
step. Don't be afraid of having the conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Don't be afraid about having the conversation. And I believe that it's something that the Lord will help bring together. But I think people just have to kind of have a willingness in their heart to, be mindful and be willing to serve families that are dealing with some of these special needs. And
this is a great case study on something you and I were talking about last night. I just think about everything theologically. I just can't help myself. But
that is true. I can attest.
Here, this is a great show because here we are talking about.
If you do say so yourself, this is a great show.
The importance of identity and the gospel and being a child of God and knowing about value, dignity, and worth and intrinsic worth of humanity. But at the same time, like looking at this issue from the reality of the real world and justice. And we have to understand like how these things go together. Like the gospel and justice don't pull each other apart. And the problem isn't that we need to de-emphasize justice. The problem is we need to have things in a proper order.
Yes.
And so, to deny the physical problems, and even in some sense to not even have the conversation, not ask questions, is to almost engage in this weird form of Gnosticism where we don't talk about the physical world. And we have to understand that God has made us, body, soul, and spirit. He came in the flesh. Jesus came, left the realms of glory to come in the flesh. And through that, we call that the incarnation. He teaches us that the physical world matters. And our faith is not one of, I'm not just a spirit being with a body. No, we're going to live in glorified bodies in the new creation. So our bodies matter. And so we don't want to treat brothers and sisters like Kaya to say, hey, like, I'm not going to see you. I don't need to really worry about this because I'm believing in the gospel over here. And if we're really going to get our theology straight, we need to kind of be working at it on both sides of the coin there. Do you want to jump in, Rhianna?
Yeah. Can I speak to that point just for a moment in regards to, maybe a perception in regards to, well, why haven't you just prayed for your child to be healed? And then, your faith must not be strong enough, type of perception. First of all, there are not enough numbers probably to count how many times we have prayed, for our child, taking her down to the altar to have her prayed for. I mean, there's too many times to count. But this is one thing that I know. The battle has already been fought for our child. And whether she walks and talks on this side of heaven is not as much of a concern as the faith I have in the fact that her eternal body is going to be perfect, it's going to be perfect. And that gives me, as a mom, that gives me peace, that gives me a better focus, it changed my prayer, because if I'm just praying for my child to walk because I want to see her walk, if I'm just praying for my child to talk because I want to hear her talk, that became very selfish prayers. You hear what I'm saying? So my prayer changed to, God, we just want to give you glory. Let her life glorify you no matter what. And that brought me to a place to where I could pray unselfishly. I could pray with the hopes and the desire that God is glorified no matter what, rather than me just praying because I want to see her walk or talk or anything like that. But I noticed that when I was praying those prayers, I would find myself being heartbroken if it didn't happen. And it wasn't necessarily, I don't think it didn't happen for a lack of faith, but the reality, this is what I came to know, is the reality is it has already happened. Like, it's done. The battle is won. It's finished. And that puts a smile on my face, right? That helps me go day by day by day, just giving thanks and honor to God for the healing that he's already, taken the stripes for, that is in her body. But it's just, it's a different perspective. It's a different mindset. But I just want to kind of caution anybody, if that's kind of going on in their brain, well, you just need to pray for her. Trust me, the prayers have been prayed. But in my mind, it's more important that God gets the glory for helping us walk through this journey the way that he has willed it, not in my own will.
And I think that's like the other side of the pole. Like, some people they only want to focus on the spiritual. Some people are like, well, it's not really real if it's not manifest in the flesh of the healing. Rather, what we want to do is, we can pray for the healing and meet the needs that are there and meet the family and creating a real, what I call a true gospel community of family, of how are we going to care for each other. So I think you wanted to say something.
I did, but it went away. Don't worry.
Sorry.
Sorry.
PTSD.
Well, sometimes it's just tired. Sometimes. No. It went away. Just kind of don't worry about that.
All right. Any final comments you want to do here before we?
Yeah, I do have
goodbye?
a question. We've talked about what the church can do and how the church, overall, I think can really support people in families. But, when we look at it like individually, what do you think is some of the most helpful things that, like, just me, I'm just a single person, what can I do to be a support?
I loved her idea earlier of like inviting them over for dinner. That was like such a great idea.
I ain't got my own house, girl. I ain't invite nobody over. No, it has to be a family decision. Do you need me to cook a meal? I can cook.
Girl, you can come over and cook anytime because I do not like to be in the kitchen.
Oh, I love it.
Yes. Yeah, no, seriously, honestly, just when people say, I would love to just meet you for coffee and just get to know who you are and your family and get to hear about your journey, together with Kaya and help me to know a little bit more about her so that when I talk to her and I'm in her presence, I'm treating her with value, and not, devaluing her. Those are things, I always appreciate that, not just because it gives me an opportunity to talk about my kid, but because of the fact that it shows me that they care and they want to, do a better job at making sure, like, as we're talking about, dignity, that they're, giving her value and showing her dignity. Because I think, again, like what Krista was saying, just this mindset of our value is based on what we can or cannot do, what someone can do for us. And the reality is, if someone is just looking at Kaya without having a relationship with her, they're thinking that she probably can't do very much for her. What's she going to do for them? These are people who don't know her, because people who know her know that she can do a lot for you because the girl's joy is radiant, like she will make your whole day. So just, showing that curiosity, like I said, and just asking for opportunities. Talk with your, people in your local church about what are some things we can do to make sure that families that are dealing, living with some challenges and things and some different situations and circumstances will feel comfortable in our house, in our house of worship, something like that. If you ask someone, another special needs family that's within your local church, and ask them, like, hey, where are some places where you feel like we're lacking as a body of believers, as a family, to be able to serve your family? Just be willing to have those conversations. And that will go a long, long ways into making your church family more whole.
And then one more thing as we close, what encouragement would you give to parents who have and very much love their special needs children?
Mm-hmm. I love to minister to mamas with special needs children because I do believe that there is a lot of limiting beliefs within the special needs community. Many of us are expecting to have to live off the government, and many of us are expecting to have to just advocate for our kid like we can't do anything else in the world. And I just want to make sure that you understand that you have place in this world, that you are your child's, mom or parent or dad or whatever, but you're also a co-ambassador with Christ. And don't ever discount your place in the kingdom to be able to do things, for God and for Christ and do big things in the world. And that's one of the things that I just love to encourage other mamas to, because because of the fact that they look at their lives and then they look at maybe their friend's life and it just looks so different because they're pushing a kid in a wheelchair, or they're dealing with autism, or they're dealing with Down syndrome, or whatever the case is, and their friend is not. Their friend is watching their kid running up and down the soccer field or going to dance class or whatever. That, again, different doesn't mean less, different doesn't mean bad. It doesn't mean that you can't have this, vivacious, vibrant life that glorifies God. It just means your life is going to look different. Dig deep into your savior and find those things, find that purpose, find that value in your own life as a mom of this child, and just don't downgrade. Don't downgrade your place, your purpose. Don't just be willing to kind of believe what God's word says, which is that he will cause all things to work out for your good, and have an expectation of that. Have an expectation of him leading and guiding you all through this life, and expect good things. Expect wonderful things, and I guess the biggest thing is, make sure that you include him, like lean on him with everything. Lean on him with everything, you got within you, because he really is there. He is faithful to his word, and he's good for it. He's good for it. And you can lean on him and he'll catch you. He'll catch you. So
that's a good word.
Yeah, that's really good. I want to make sure people see Rhianna's book one more time on Amazon, The Special Life, Living Life with Special Needs and Loving It.
Yes, and she also has another book based on purity for teen girls, and I might get the title wrong. I'm sorry if I do, but I believe it's called The Identity of Purity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it is for teen girls, and so that's a different show, different topic, but also an awesome resource. So make sure you guys check out her book, get it, and so show some love for the family.
So on CFBU Facebook, there's a comment here of some more practical ideas from Vera. She says that knowing that I had someone in the church to call on in emergencies was such a relief, especially when my husband was working and not available. Another idea is to ride or drive us to the hospital, or just to come hang out if I had something come up. I can kind of attest to that. When Monique first came and we were dealing with her extreme PTSD, there were some times where I needed people to come and help and hang out with you while I went to work. And there were a few moments, I'd forgotten about that, but there were some few days where I needed help with that. And so I could see how that could be a help to people, and such a simple thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The ways that we don't always consider.
Yeah.
That can be so helpful.
Yeah.
Rhianna,
Definitely.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No, we are glad that you said yes. I'm going to text you after this, girl. Don't worry.
Well, thanks for just sharing your story and being so vulnerable and just helping us. I've learned a lot tonight, and just helping us be a better family to each other and helping us see each other better. I think it's been so good.
Yeah, and if you aren't thinking that this is a justice issue, then you are sadly mistaken.
Yeah.
This is such a justice issue in a way that we can do justice.
Yeah.
That we can truly Micah 6:8 it. Like, how do I do justice? Well,
here it is.
Here, right here. Culture's telling us a lot of things, and it's not really real. But this is a real way to do justice, practically in your own community.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mwah.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
That was good.
Yes.
I learned a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's really good.
She's just so sweet and but I mean, don't play a mama bear too. Well, don't come for the family. Don't come for our family. I just really appreciate her voice in that space and how she's really leading a conversation for mothers with children who have special needs. Yeah. And it's something that's really needed. We recently saw her on another podcast, and that's kind of what sparked our thoughts about, hey, like, why aren't you in our podcast? What's going on? We've been sleeping on it. So there's that, but I just think there's a community that she really gets to minister to.
Yeah. I'm wondering, a question, I didn't want to put her on the spot, so I'll put you on the spot.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, when it comes to critical theory, like, how does that play into the whole disabilities conversation. Like one thing that was coming to me, and so I don't know if I'm on the right track or not, but if there was sustained, like kind of not seeing these problems and making accommodations and provisions, people with disabilities could be seen as like an oppressed group. And then, it would be like, well, we're invisible, you're erasing us, we're not being seen. So I'm just wondering, like, how does that play into critical theory? Because I know that is one of the critical theories is ableism.
There is, and I'm not specifically sure, so I don't want to give too much information. I know that if we were to look at things like abortion as a systemic issue, I think, and when I say abortion as a systemic issue, systemically impacting African Americans. Margaret Sanger and the eugenics movement and Planned Parenthood and all of that would have advocated for Kaya not to be born.
Well,
so that's a whole nother situation along the side of critical social theory, and like, what do you do with that conversation? But at the same
of like aborting a disabled person from the get go.
But at the same time, those who have life, you do get ableist studies, and how are the disabled treated, and are they, trying to be erased?
Like, how do you get equity?
Oppressed, and
I'm just like trying to.
I don't have enough in my wheelhouse to be able to thread that out right now. I need to do some more research.
With the critical theory definition of equity, like, how do you get there for somebody like Kaya? I just don't know how that works. So maybe somebody will write in the show and explain it to me. All right. So now, let's see. We're going to do our tweet of the week in just a minute, but we want to take just a minute to talk about our other show sponsor, which is Impact 360. And we know that a lot of you have teens in your home, and we know that this generation is kind of living in a different world. Talking a lot about Gen Z, if they were born kind of 1999-ish to 2015, it's really kind of the first post-Christian generation, and Impact 360 is kind of uniquely trying to position themselves to help with discipleship on that.
Yeah, they're answering the question of how can we prepare our children to be grounded in biblical truth, and preparing them, like, how do we prepare them for the challenges that they're going to meet in our current culture?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of challenges. Like, let's just be honest. There are a lot of challenges that our kids today are going to face, and they are starting to face them. I did a live stream earlier this week. What are we doing and how are we preparing kids in kindergarten to face things like pronouns and being non-binary and all of these conversations that kindergartners are now having. And so Impact 360 is looking at how do we prepare high school students and young adults to face some of these worldview challenges.
Yeah, and they've really created some amazing programs there to kind of life experiences, relationship, discipleship, and apologetics put together in one package to really help the next generation grow in their faith.
Yes. So let's play the video.
No, we're not going to play the video.
We're not playing the video.
This is the video.
Oh, sorry. Well, then I will say, y'all, I don't know what's going on. Just know that I just sit here most days. Okay, let's just be honest. I just show up. But they do have awesome speakers like Elisa Childers, JP Moreland,
and you.
Me, we'll be speaking together there in July. Brett Kunkel has spoken there. I want to say Jay Warner Wallace has spoken there.
So a lot of trusted professionals,
yes,
that are friends of the ministry. So go visit impact360.org and see if this is a resource that can maybe help your faith. And if you use the promo code,
all the things.
We have our own promo code.
Whoop, whoop.
You can waive the application fee. Now, there's only a few slots left for next year, so people are going to want to jump on that.
Yes, get in.
So if you have a student that's looking at maybe taking a gap year,
they have a gap year, but they also have like a 2-week program. I think they even have
camp.
A week program. They have a lot of things. Check them out. Use the promo code, all the things, to waive the application fee and help ground your child over the summer, for a week or two in their worldview.
Yeah, very good. All right. And now it's time for the tweet of the week. The dramatic opening is back.
Yes, it is.
Man, I need some powder. Like, I'm really shiny tonight.
So am I. Don't worry.
So am I. I
feel like I've been running a marathon. But don't worry, family. We are just here together, just sitting up in the living room.
Okay, so I have a world famous tweeter this week.
Okay.
Her name is The Real Monique D.
Oh, yeah, that was a mess.
So
says CRT, polyamory, Equality Act, coming for the church and our kids. Pastors, unite people around truth. The deception is thick. Yes. So
tell me what was going on in this.
So
week.
I saw this article. You actually sent me this article. 3 dads and a baby tells the journey of a polyamorous family. So there's a family.
It's from a few months ago, but yeah.
But I had watched the woke preschool clips and all that. And I was just like,
woke kindergarten.
What in the world is going on?
Go on YouTube.
So this family, it's 3 dads.
Yeah.
And 2 of the dads have been married or together for 15 years. And then the 3rd dad joined in about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And together they had surrogate women, moms to hold babies for them twice, and on the birth certificates of the children are all 3 dads' names.
So it's the first. What's landmark about this is the first legal documents with 3 parents, 3 dads.
No women.
No women.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we don't need women anymore. I don't know what this is. But what was interesting to me about this article is all of the argumentation that was being used is like a mirror of what we hear right now in the LGBT community about their reason and their posture of how beautiful it is and heterosexual monogamy is not normal and we need to this is so loving and why would you object? Well, these are all the same arguments that are being used by the polyamory people.
Yes.
And I called this like 5 years ago. I said, this is going to be the next thing. And people will come on my Facebook like, no, that'll never happen. Well,
here it is.
Here it is.
You texted me that and you said, I called it 5 years ago. And I was like, you know these people? You called them 5 years ago? I didn't understand.
So confused.
I didn't understand. But yes, this is what is coming next, friends. And it's unfortunate, but this is what I believe they're going to start to even teach kids. And so if you missed our live stream on Thursday at the family meeting was at 5:00 this week. We talked about how to talk to your kids about critical social theory concepts that they're now being met with. And it came because I was watching the woke preschool read alouds, where there's a teacher and she's quite engaging. She understands kids. She's extremely talented. And she is, talking about why you can use a pronoun like a tree. Now, I didn't know tree was a pronoun. I wasn't an English major, but tree can be a pronoun. And how, Linda likes the pronoun he, and how Barbara doesn't, want to use a pronoun at all because she's non-binary. And she goes by they. Or how, as a child of, 3, 5, whatever. And she says this, your gender at birth, your parents only guess because of your anatomy. So they look and they say, okay, well, this is a boy. Until you tell them, yes, you are right. I am a boy. Or, well, you actually made a mistake. I know I got the anatomy.
5-year-olds.
This is a 4 or 5-year-old. 3 to 5. It could, because it's definitely Cat in the Hat kind of material. Cat in the Hat or 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish, that kind of story time book. But and this is, again, I said it on the live stream. This is why I'm saying we need to be teaching our kids. Our kids are capable of learning so much and absorbing so much. If they can teach your child about being non-binary, I am sure we can teach them truth.
You're pretty sure about this.
I'm sure.
So I'm going to ask our moderators. I think Laura's jumped on there too to put a link in the chat to your live stream with Elizabeth Urbanovitz from Thursday.
Yes.
About that, and people can catch that replay. There's a lot of good information there. And then you're having another live stream this Thursday with your friend Tim Stratton from Maven. talking about tweens and teens. And I think what we have to know in all of this conversation is polyamory and woke kindergarten and pronouns. Look, these are all worldview issues. Mm-hmm. So you're going to either teach your child, this is how we're going to think about things in the, of a world that reflects, their physical anatomy, and this is what marriage is, and we're going to allow God to define these things, or our kids are just going to get swept away into what the culture is telling them.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that I appreciated about Elizabeth Urbanowitz in this conversation is she is the founder of Foundation Worldview. And so she helps parents to teach worldview, a biblical worldview, to their younger children. She gave suggestions on how do you do this with like a 4, 5, 6-year-old? How do you do this with an 8, 9, 10-year-old? And so then this week we'll move into teens and tweens. But if you're really looking, if you have a teen, like late teen, check out Impact 360 because they do a very good job of helping. We've already been there once. We've seen it, how they can thread out how do young people figure out the worldview, and how do they impart, not just take it for themselves, but yes, how do they understand it for themselves, but then also how do they almost do mission with it and be able to use practical steps from their worldview.
Yeah, for sure. So this is the world that we're living in. You're going to have to start those conversations younger and younger. Kathy says on YouTube, we need to start teaching our children from a very young age. I think that's absolutely correct. The younger, the better, and it's not just about information. It's about telling them we as a family this is how we are going to see the world, talk about the world, and we're going to have to teach as if we are preparing our children to live countercultural from the beginning.
Yeah.
We have to program it into them from the beginning. We are different. We are going to live our lives differently than the world around us. Even some people who name the name of Christ, this is how we are going to live. And you have to kind of program them from the beginning to live in the future counterculturally.
I mean, look at Mr. Potato Head.
Oh,
I'm not going to say what I said before, but poor Mr. Potato Head. Now they just have Potato Head and Potato Head. So Mr. Potato Head is just Potato Head. Mrs. Potato Head is just Potato Head. And it's just a mess. It's a mess. Anyway, and Dr. Seuss did get canceled.
I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, Dr. Seuss got canceled. And let's see. Thank you. And Elizabeth got me talking to my 7-year-old about objective, subjective truth.
Yay!
Yes. Good for you, Kathy. Go ahead.
Yeah. So go check out Monique's live stream from Thursday, and then be sure to set your calendar for this Thursday. One more reminder before we go. If you haven't yet done so, go add your name to the Center for Biblical Unity mailing list so you can get the link to the Joe Miller's conference, Critical Race Theory and Christianity.
Yes, only available if you are on our mailing list. And with that, we are now signing off. It's time for us to go take a nap. It's been a long day.
Have a good week, everyone. God bless.
You.